coming up on Wrestling Life.
It was a weird time in WWF. It was the post-steroid scandal. So I think WWF was looking for that next big heel, that big giant. Because I don't remember who the heel was. All the guys were baby faces that we liked. So there was no this, because Ric Flair had left. Undertaker was a baby face. You needed this heel. So I think it was right. I mean, the guy was larger than life. He was this unstoppable force. And how could you put more heat and build a star? Put him in the main event, have him win the Rumble.
This is Wrestling Life with Ben Veal, the show that celebrates wrestling's past, present, and future with real talk from real talent.
Today we're here to talk about a Samoan mountain of a man who portrayed a Japanese sumo wrestler, was managed by a salt-throwing villain, and within a year of his debut sat atop the WWF mountain as its world heavyweight champion. And I do mean heavyweight. His name was Yokozuna, of course, a larger-than-life wrestling superstar who defied the laws of physics, inspired both awe and fear, and whose life burned brightly but tragically short. The wrestling world lost him in October 2000 at the very young age of 34. But today, alongside my co-host for People's Broker Ash Ajaz, we pay tribute to another grappling great gone too soon, as we dive deep into the life, the career and the legacy of the one and only Yokozuna of pro wrestling. Ash, welcome to another episode of Wrestling Life. How are you, my friend?
Thank you, Ben. Great to join you as always. I love doing these. I think this is now the fourth episode we're recording together. And yeah, what a great one to talk about. Another one that I've been looking forward to, considering childhood memories. Yeah, Yokozuna. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to dive into it and talk about his legacy.
Well, it is. I mean, childhood memories. I mean, for me, growing up early 90s wrestling, I mean, the Banzai drop, the Salt in the Eyes, the USS Intrepid. I mean, there is just so much to talk about. There's so many great memories, but I think it would be remiss of us not to kind of talk about first where we are currently in the WWE in 2025. And, it's only a couple of months ago, WrestleMania 41, Roman Reigns comes to the ring and they've got all these wonderful kind of graphics of all of the bloodline and everyone that's part of the Samoan dynasty there on his way to the ring. And obviously front and center of that is Yokozuna.
Yep.
As I said at the start, he passes away just age 34, dies in Liverpool, in fact, in England, whilst on the UK tour. He would only be 59 now. Crazy to think his 60th birthday would be this year. Where do you think Yokozuna would be if he was still here and if the bloodline, as part of that bloodline faction? Because it feels like he could have had an incredible role to play in that faction.
Yeah. Firstly, when it comes to bloodline, I think Yokozuna, I mean, the bloodline, the legacy, the Anoa'i family, you look at their history, they go further back. But he kind of paved the way. He kind of opened that door, because up until then, I think the Samoans and the wrestlers and stuff like that, they were never like main eventers. He was the first main eventer and the first world champion. And I think he opened the door to so many of the guys who came after, Roman Reigns right now, obviously also The Rock being related and stuff. So yeah, I mean, right now, oof.
So you say
he could have been part of the new bloodline faction. I mean, it was so cool.
Can you imagine it? How amazing would that have been?
Banzai dropping everybody, yeah. You don't mess with the bloodline.
You don't. And I got to be honest, as a kid, the Banzai drop, just throw that right in off the bat. The Banzai drop just absolutely terrified me, as I'm sure it did anyone who was on the receiving end of it. Like, we all know that there's a line between fiction and reality when it comes to wrestling, but very few moves look as real as that man sitting on you from a high height.
Even right now, when I was watching it the other day, I'm like, man, how did he do it and not kill the other guy? He must be really good at doing these low squats, like literally just sitting an inch above the ground.
But that's it. I mean, I think it's worth saying right off the bat, like, what an incredibly agile big man. Between Yokozuna, Vader, and Bam Bam Bigelow, I would put them as my top three of like giant guys that could just do so much. I mean, even when Yokozuna's weight skyrocketed in the later part of his career, still able to move so fast and so beyond what you'd expect a man of his size to do.
He did. And I think that set him apart because you don't expect that from big guys. They move slow, a few move sets here and there. Man, he was so quick. The super kick. Who saw a 500-pound guy hitting you with a super kick? Or, the slam, this and that. And then in the corner, it was nuts how fast he moved, the fast he ran across the ring. It was crazy. It was crazy. It was like a bus, bam, coming around the corner.
Great. So, I mean, the first time you and I really introduced to him is obviously in 1992. This is early days of the WWF. Before he gets to the WWF, he's wrestled as the Great Kokina and Kokina Maximus in Japan, in Mexico, and across the US. He's kind of played this like really monstrous Samoan heel early on. And he gets to the WWE or the WWF. And of course, there is a very brief period where they think they're going to bring this Kokina character over, and he's initially presented, as part of that Samoan family. But very quickly, he is repackaged and transitioned to Yokozuna. I don't know about you, but I remember vividly the first time I ever saw Yokozuna on TV. Yeah. It was a WWF Superstars squash match. And I just remember the camera kind of slowly panning up from his feet, wearing that kind of white and red kind of, I don't even know, the sumo gear. I'd never been exposed to sumo wrestling. So the whole thing blew my mind. And I just remember, and this is such a testament to give the devil his due to Vince McMahon and his creative visions for people. The kind of slow pan all the way up from the feet, all the way up the body to eventually his crossed arms and his face. Yeah. Absolutely terrifying. Just such a menacing, imposing figure from day one.
So fun fact, he was actually scheduled to debut as part of the Head Shrinkers.
Yes, yeah.
As one off of the Head Shrinkers with Samu. But he got hurt, so Fatu, a.k.a. Rikishi, had to take his place. So then when Yoko got healthy, they're like, what do we do with him? So they came up with this idea of, this massive heel, the Japanese, put him in with Mr. Fuji, and, great. So again, another testament to everything happens for a reason. Could you imagine?
It's crazy. And from every conversation I've had with people who knew Yoko and loved Yoko and knew him away from the scenes, I'm talking people like that have been on this show, like Godfather and like Henry Godwin. I've spoken to Brian Clark about him. A very, very quiet, funny, chilled guy, by all accounts, is what everyone says about the real life Rodney away from the world of WWE and this character. But he gets put in this incredibly stoic, intense, silent Japanese character, which clearly wouldn't happen today. There is no way that a company would get away with casting a Samoan as Japanese, but this is the 90s and anything goes. It just works so well from day one. Obviously, he's paired up with Mr. Fuji, and Mr. Fuji was just like one of those wonderful old school heel managers, wasn't he? But we don't see enough of anymore. But just the fact you were paired with Mr. Fuji made you an instant villain from the second you walked through the curtain.
You mentioned his debut. That's what I remember as a kid, like every week watching Superstars on the weekend and seeing, Yokozuna, this giant coming down the ring, Mr. Fuji with him, and then, the salt sprinkling before the match and, all these rituals. Sometimes I think there was these women, geisha, and they were handing him flowers and stuff like that. And then him, I think his entrance was much longer than his matches. I think his matches lasted literally like a minute. Like enhancement talent, bam, super kick, slam, Banzai. Like, oh God, he's dead again. So you were thinking, my goodness, he was built up as such a heel. Oh my God, no one can stop him. So in your head, you're fantasy booking it. Oh, who could beat him? Maybe the Undertaker. Maybe, but like anybody come across him is like so tiny next to him. No one can beat this guy.
And his music as well. I mean, his music is still one of those WWF theme tunes that still lives on in my head. But it was just so powerful, wasn't it? There's so much awe to it. The second you hear those opening chords, everything about his entrance, I put him right up there with the Undertaker in terms of just an awe-inspiring entrance as well.
Yes, it was like when that music hit. In your head, you're like, ooh, like a bit scary, like, feeling like from like a horror movie, like music playing. Oh my God, here we go. Someone's going to die.
And for me as well, I mean, I didn't, I'm 8 years old. I didn't know what a Yokozuna was. I didn't know it was a term. I didn't know how significant that was within the world of sumo wrestling. We get to Survivor Series 1992. That's when we really first see him having a match against anyone of note, and that being Virgil. And obviously, by the same way as his other enhancement talent matches, Virgil was a goner very, very quickly. The ascent then for Yokozuna is stratospheric, to say the least. He's only been with the company a handful of months. I think it's August or September that we first see him on screen. Yeah. And January, it's the Royal Rumble. And this 1993 Royal Rumble is so significant because it's the first time that the winner of the Rumble gets a title shot at WrestleMania.
Yes.
Crazy to think that there was a long period where the Royal Rumble was just the prestige of winning the Rumble.
Yeah.
And obviously in 1992, it was for the vacant title. 1993, Yokozuna enters. He enters late into the match. And from the second he arrives, obviously the question is, how could anyone possibly eliminate this 505-pound giant of a man? But in the back of your head, equally, he's still really, really new to the company. He hasn't really done anything. And he's in there as the final two against two-time WWF legendary champion, Macho Man Randy Savage.
Yeah.
Old school fans are thinking, Randy's obviously got to find a way to eliminate Yokozuna. Only a year before, at WrestleMania 8, Randy was the world champion at WrestleMania. You're assuming that Randy can topple the beast.
Exactly. I mean, I remember those Rumbles sort of like in the late 80s when Andre the Giant used to be in it. So always the question was, who's going to put Andre over the top rope? I always saw Andre like winning these battle royals. So it was the same kind of feeling. Oh, how the hell can someone, because you can't even lift him. No one can. It was impossible. How would he go over? So but that was, and in the end, coming down to him and Macho Man trying to pin him in this Royal Rumble.
What? Okay, so let's just stop there a second. What was that all about? Because even as a very young fan, I'm there like screaming at the TV thinking, what are you doing? You know the rules.
He was trying to pin him only to be the greatest oversell in the history of any battle royal that I've ever seen. He just like hoisted him, bam, over the top rope. He's eliminated. That was
and also only someone like Randy Savage could pull that off. Being on the floor, bench press from the floor, and being able to essentially self-eliminate themselves over the top rope just shows how amazing he was. But it's a ridiculous spot, which you watch back with hindsight, and you're like, that is ridiculous. But also, I'd put it in like the top Rumble eliminations of all time. It's a moment that 30 odd years on still makes you smile, and you remember exactly where you were when you saw it. And that's what wrestling's all about at the end of the day, isn't it? It's about those beautiful memories.
Because it was finished in an instant. It was like, bam, quickly, whoa, it's over. He's eliminated him. So it was and that's not like one of those, someone's teetering at the ropes or all this and that. It was like, bam, gone, bye.
Emphatic. So Yokozuna's the Royal Rumble winner, and immediately afterwards, I think this was a Coliseum home video exclusive. We used to get those little nuggets on the tapes that we got here in the UK. But he confronts Bret Hart in the press conference. So there were even these press conferences happening. I can't remember if it was a press conference or if it was backstage, but he confronts him at the end of the night, and we are all systems going for WrestleMania 9. And you and I have spoken a lot about WrestleMania 9. I know that it has a very special place in your heart, as it does in mine. It was the first WrestleMania I ever saw, and for that, it will always... I can't view it in the way that some fans view WrestleMania 9. I adore WrestleMania 9 for all of its faults. And I was obviously a huge Bret Hart guy going into WrestleMania 9.
Yes.
And the idea of Bret Hart versus Yokozuna was unbelievably tantalizing, because Bret's already got form for kind of toppling giants, and we've seen him kind of vanquish like Papa Shango and the Berserker and people like that on over the last few months. So we know that size isn't an issue for the Hitman. And we know that he has this ability to kind of systematically wear down his opponent and pick body spots. And so we know that Bret has the ability to potentially overcome this giant challenger. Going into WrestleMania 9, I was fully confident that the Hitman would overthrow the mighty Yokozuna.
Yeah, that was the match. Like Bret was my champion. I mean, we all loved Bret as kids. And I still remember that WrestleMania 9 and that main event and that sight, the first, when they come face to face and there's wind blowing, because it was outdoors. It was an amazing experience for us as kids, seeing this WrestleMania taking place in daytime outdoors. And then when they come, it was just amazing sight. That was like, okay. And I had faith in Bret. I was like, okay, Bret could do it, but Yokozuna, I don't know. I had my doubts as well.
It's interesting to watch it back with adult eyes, because as a kid, I didn't question whether this push was happening too soon. I didn't think, for me, it was like immediately legitimate world title contender. I didn't even question it. Of course, he's giant. He's won the Rumble. He's world champion. But there is a question, was Yokozuna's push too soon? Did this happen too soon? What do you think?
Tough to say. I mean, it was a weird time in WWF. If you remember, it was the post-steroid scandal. So I think WWF was looking for that next big heel, that big giant. Because I don't remember who the heel was. Everybody, all the guys were baby faces that we liked. So there was no this, because Ric Flair had left, Undertaker was a baby face, so you needed this heel. So I think it was right. Because, pushing him. I mean, the guy was larger than life.
Yeah.
He was this unstoppable force. And how could you put more heat and build a star? Yeah. Put him in the main event, have him win the Rumble. So yeah, good on them.
So we get to WrestleMania 9. Such an iconic kind of shot of the two of them in the ring. Bret in his full-on neon pink, Yokozuna there staring him down. And I remember Bret just like running. There's this great shot like where you kind of looking through Yokozuna's legs as he's kind of squatting in the corner, and then Bret Hart runs at him and hits a drop kick. I mean, what a way to start a match.
Full on match. And it was a really good match. I mean, look at it this way. Bret Hart, greatest worker ever. Yokozuna, another very agile big guy. And we've seen Bret in great matches with big guys. We saw the match he had with Bam Bam and King of the Ring. And how amazing that match was. And because both guys, great workers. And same here, how they both sold for each other, because realistically, you got a little guy wearing 200 something pounds and you got a 500-pound guy. How do they make it work? Because he's not going to body slam him. He's not going to suplex him. How the hell is he going to put him in a sharpshooter? How is that going to happen? How is he going to flip him over? So the way that each other sold for each other and they worked together, I think it over delivered for me. Like the match, it was amazing.
Yeah, I think so. Now Bret in his book in Hitman has said about how he was disappointed with the match, how it had to be cut short because Yokozuna was kind of blown up cardiovascularly, so they had to shave a lot of it off and they had to kind of go home far sooner than planned. Certainly watching it back, I've watched it back a lot of times. I still think by far it's the best match on that show. I mean, that's not saying much, but it's the best match on that show until the finish. I mean, I think, they both get in a lot of offense. I think there was obviously supposed to be much more back and forth and a slower build. But equally, they're wrestling outside in Las Vegas, which is pretty crazy. We see it in WrestleMania 41 when we're at the Allegiant Stadium and a big air-conditioned dome. This was outside in the elements in the middle of the afternoon. So the fact that anyone managed to wrestle is crazy. But obviously, we get to the end of the match, which has gone down in the history books as one of the most infamous moments of all time.
Let me take a deep breath before we talk about this. If we have to talk about
we must talk about it. So Bret's done the unthinkable. Somehow, some way, he has got Yokozuna locked in the sharpshooter, and he's holding him there, and he's holding him there for a good long time, which fair play. That must have been no easy task. And we're thinking, is Yokozuna going to submit? When suddenly that dastardly Mr. Fuji reaches into his robes, salt in the eyes, Bret's down, sneaky roll up, 1, 2, 3, and before you know it, Yokozuna, this giant newcomer, is the World Wrestling Federation champion. End of the night, everyone goes home. WrestleMania 9, crown the champion. End of WrestleMania 9. Ta-da! And then he comes out.
Not to be.
Take it away, Ash.
You have to send the fans home happy, so yeah.
Somebody needs to pose.
Title Run Toys Series 1. Dangerous Danny Davis. Wrath. Juventud Guerrera. Ernest the Cat Miller. And Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. Coming to the ring soon.
So, someone came down the ring afterwards trying to console Bret. Someone wearing yellow and red. And, Hulk Hogan comes down. He's trying to help Bret. Oh, what happened? And Bret is like telling him, go in. And,
go get him, Hulkster.
And weirdly enough, Yokozuna challenges Hogan to a match, and then Bret's like, go on. And he goes in, 2 moves, leg drop, and the title is changed hands. I still to this day, I don't understand this. I don't know what were your thoughts as a kid watching this. Were you happy? Were you a Hulkamaniac? Were you like, yes?
No, so interestingly, Hulk Hogan was the first wrestler that ever hooked me on wrestling. So it was a Hulk Hogan trading card was what first drew me to the WWF. So the vision of Hulk Hogan, absolutely. But no, I was a Bret Hart fan. So I couldn't really understand this. I couldn't really understand why he'd just been able to go in and do that and take Bret's title. You look at it now, and it's really interesting to think, like, was it a purely selfish moment from Hogan? Or was it a really good way to create some buzz? Obviously, we live in the world now. If this had happened now, it wouldn't shock anyone because that would just be such a big viral moment. You'd know exactly what it was done for. Yeah. You'd know it would be for views and likes and for getting the world talking. Back then, it just made no sense whatsoever. But, the whole match setup, why would Mr. Fuji, Yokozuna's advocate, who has his best interests at heart, why would he take his new champion who had nothing to gain whatsoever from wrestling Hulk Hogan, and why would he offer him a title match in the middle of a ring at the end of his guy wrestling a 15-minute match under the hot Vegas sun? So that makes no sense. Why would Bret Hart encourage it? And we know the true story of that. We know that in Bret's book Hitman, he talks about how his character is saying, go get him, whilst in reality, the real Bret Hart is saying, here you go, steal my thunder. I've worked so hard for this, just take everything that I've been building. Yeah. We know, as the story goes, this was supposedly to set up Hogan versus Bret at SummerSlam 1993, where Hogan would do the honours and pass the torch to the new generation. So there is a theoretical plan. But as it all plays out on the night, you've got Yokozuna, who, as we've just said, has been impeccably booked to this point. He is an unstoppable monster, and suddenly all it takes is a salt to the eyes, a kick, and a leg drop, and he's gone in 2 minutes, losing the title. Crazy.
I mean, for me, for the worst WrestleMania main event finishes, it's got to be probably up there. The second worst was probably WrestleMania 27 with The Miz and Cena and The Rock, the whole thing. So, but I think this one takes...
To bring it bang up today, I'd probably put WrestleMania 41 with Travis Scott as the third worst.
That's recency bias, I think, you know?
Yeah. I'll tell you what, we'll have this conversation in 10 years.
In another time. But this booking, right? I just want to say one more thing about it. Who did it really help? So you made your current champion, Bret Hart, who's been working so hard to stay champion all this time, make him look like a chump that he lost to a genuine superstar. Okay, fine. But with the Hogan coming in, Hogan comes in, beats Yokozuna in 2 moves. So you made Bret look like a chump that, you couldn't beat him wrestling all this time. I beat him in 2 moves. And you made Yokozuna look like a chump, this monster no one could touch. And bam, 2 moves. Yeah, Hulkamaniac because I took my vitamins probably or something. And I was just baffled. Even as a kid, I think by the time I was done with Hogan, I had switched to Ultimate Warrior anyways, I think, after all those years. And then I was a Bret guy, so I was extremely unhappy.
I remember it was a WWF magazine cover, and it was like Hogan holding up the belt, and it was like Hulk Hogan, how many days, like question mark, but it had like Bret Hart, whatever it was, like 180 days or whatever as champion, and then it had Yokozuna 128 seconds as champion. It's just crazy, and you're right, it didn't benefit anyone. The main casualty out of all of this would be Yokozuna. Bret Hart would bounce back in many ways. This would be his Daniel Bryan moment, I think. I think the groundswell of support, people saw even back then what had happened and understood the politics and understood that their guy had lost unfairly and how he'd been made to look, and so that would go on to, I think by the time that Bret is recrowned in 1994, which we'll obviously get to, but Bret was such a bigger star because of this loss and how he was treated. Hogan, it made no difference to whatsoever. It was just to appease him on the day. But Yokozuna's the real casualty because we see vulnerability for the first time. This guy shouldn't be losing at this point. He should be the unstoppable monster because that's what you've just created. He is the new Andre the Giant. Andre the Giant does not lose. And Yokozuna doesn't lose. So no one wins in this scenario. And 2 months later, when we get to the first King of the Ring in Dayton, Ohio, that is when Hogan does the honors, so to speak. And Yokozuna decisively gets his championship back. However, it's not really decisive because there's outside interference from this crazy kind of fireball camera explosion from a allegedly Japanese reporter. And also, it's in front of a tiny crowd. I mean, this is the first King of the Ring. It's a small venue. It's not like Hogan putting him over even at SummerSlam. It's kind of like it's a B show, really. And so he does get his title back, but in the process of all the kind of nonsense that's gone on in the meantime, he's already lost a lot of luster, Yokozuna, and he has to cheat to win yet again.
Yeah, I think it really dropped Yokozuna's stock in my eyes, losing in 2 moves at WrestleMania and then having to, this unstoppable giant has to resort to probably paying a cameraman to throw a fireball in Hogan's eyes to beat him. I think the best bit was when after the match, he beat up on Hogan and gave him a Banzai drop in the corner. I'm like, okay. But I think it left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth. They put it right. They put the belt back on Yokozuna. But I think, they kind of they messed it up. I think
they put it right to a degree. But given that this would end up being Hogan's last kind of televised match, he'd still finish out a European tour. But this is the last time that Hogan appears on WWF television for actually what will be 9 years.
Yes.
it could have been a really emphatic finish of multiple Banzai drops, like we saw on Jim Duggan, a real kind of multiple Banzai drops for a decisive 3 count. And then Hogan's carried out there on a stretcher, end of. If you're going to put him over strong.
Exactly.
And this is Yokozuna becomes a 2-time champion, both via cheap cheating, which feels crazy. I know we have to protect the baby faces, but with someone as big as Yoko, you feel like he could emphatically get a win for a championship.
And if Hogan was on the way out, and that was going to be his last match, Yokozuna could have won clean, I think. And that would have done more for Yokozuna. Like, look at this guy. He's beaten Hulk Hogan, the unstoppable force, this guy. And that could have even helped elevate Yokozuna even more. So ultimately, when Bret beats him next year, that elevates that guy even more. So I don't know. Again, as you said, politics, and we know about it now, but we didn't know about it as kids.
No.
But they could have done a better job there.
They could have done. I think that's kind of where we go through a lot of Yokozuna's kind of booking, but it's hard to argue against a lot of the kind of 1993 period for him as champion, because once he becomes champion, he is a dominant champion. He is champion for 10 months.
Yep.
And heading into July, and this is genuinely one of my peak memories as a kid, and when I had Lex Luger on the show last year, I couldn't have been happier to kind of relive this with him. Of course, we get to Independence Day, July the 4th, 1993, the Yokozuna Bodyslam challenge aboard the USS Intrepid, this old Navy vessel. And all of these kind of NFL players and superstars are in the ring on this bakingly hot day. I believe it was like 100 degrees or something, like an insanely hot day to work in. Yeah. And they're all trying to slam Yokozuna in the middle of a ring. And it was such a kind of shot of its time. Like, do you remember? I remember watching that around a friend's house and being like, wow, this is like genuinely the coolest thing I've ever seen, like wrestling on a ship.
That was so cool. Still to this day, I go back and watch it time to time. It's such an amazing. I showed it to my son, and even he was impressed. He was like, wow, that's pretty cool. And especially, the end bit. Oh, everybody has failed. Everybody's tried. Crush, British Bulldog, even the Macho Man who was like kind of the host there. Even he tries. No one can get it. And certainly you see this helicopter come in and stuff like that. And you've spoken on your podcast with Lex Luger about it. But yeah, that was an amazing memory, amazing time, I think. Oh my God, someone's body slam Yokozuna. Jeez, that's unreal. That's got to be the strongest man in history.
And again, going for Vince McMahon's genius at repackaging people. You've taken the narcissist, and it just immediately overnight you make him this new character. So he comes in on his helicopter, all kind of red, white, and blue, bedecked, and so he is Mr. USA. Hulk Hogan's gone. He's old news. He's out of the company. Here comes the new Mr. USA, and in this moment that's captured and relived time and time again in highlight reels, he kind of hits Yokozuna. Yokozuna goes in the corner. Yoko comes back and he slams him, and it's the new slam heard around the world. Yeah. And I spoke to Lex about this, and he was very open, saying basically he was wearing these cowboy boots. He wasn't set in proper ring attire, and he knew that he couldn't do this. He knew he wouldn't have the footing to do this, and Yoko's just like, no problem at all. Just hit cool as a cucumber, no problem at all. Hit a wide stance. I've got you, brother. And Yokozuna by Lex Luger's own admission, Yokozuna slams himself.
So what made me a wrestling fan was seeing Hogan body slam Andre. That was, that made me wrestle. And then seeing this, something about body slamming big guys. I don't know what about it. It just makes you a fan and kind of hooks you back in. Something about it.
Well, it's the larger-than-life, beautiful element of wrestling, isn't it? This kind of cartoon character side of it, which is wonderful. All of this is building to SummerSlam 1993. So Lex aboard the Lex Express, goes on a tour across the country in his red, white, and blue bus, kissing babies and signing autographs and just being a general card-carrying American good guy.
Yeah, like Hogan did back in the day. Remember, he was on a tour.
But it's all leading to the main event of SummerSlam 1993, which ostensibly is going to be Lex Luger's crowning moment. This is going to be the quick ascent. So we've had the bad guy, but now the new American good guy comes in. Yeah. And curiously, for whatever reason, there's been kind of rumor and innuendo over the years that Lex was supposed to win the title and that there had been leaked footage of him with the title belt. This has been talked about both at SummerSlam 93 and at WrestleMania 10. Whether or not the plan was for him to become world champion, and for whatever reason it got nixed. But we get into the end of SummerSlam, and Lex hits Yoko with his bionic arm, his steel-plated arm. Yoko's out of the ring. Yoko gets counted out, and Lex wins the match. He's hoisted on the shoulders by all the other baby faces. Red, white, and blue balloons come down. It's the front cover of WWF magazine. Everyone's cheering wildly, and no idea why, because he hasn't won the title. He hasn't won anything.
Title doesn't change hands.
Just nonsense. Absolute nonsense. He just
they already bought the balloons, I think, so they had to use them.
So, he doesn't win. Yoko yet again squeaks out a victory. And, it's all leading to, we assume there's going to be a further match down the line. We assume Lex's big moment is coming because as we move into Survivor Series, we have got Yoko's team, the Foreign Fanatics, versus Lex Luger's All-American team. I don't know if you remember this, Ash, but do you remember the Undertaker's announcement on Superstars that he was joining the All-Americans, and he opens up his big black coat, his cape, and suddenly it's just got the red, white, and blue.
That was so crazy seeing that. What? Undertaker is American? I thought he was the dead man. He didn't belong to anyone.
Nobody says an American badass.
Yeah, it was the early signs of American badass. That was pretty nuts. I couldn't see Undertaker. Oh, Undertaker's joining the American team. Oh, great. Okay.
And he's there with the real Americans. So it's Lex Luger, Rick and Scott Steiner, and The Undertaker versus Crush, Quebecer Jacques, Ludwig Borger, and Yokozuna. What a dastardly group of foreign fanatics we got there.
Always foreign heels always sell.
Absolutely. And so we get to this match, which ultimately the All-Americans win, of course, because it's Survivor Series and it's Thanksgiving. Yoko's eliminated in a match after he gets into this brawl with The Undertaker. Little do we know at the time that that's going to set up what will be a whole year-long story arc between Yoko and The Undertaker. You said at the start of the episode about, as soon as Yoko arrives, kind of we're thinking about kind of fantasy booking.
Yeah.
And Yokozuna and The Undertaker on paper is a dream match.
Yeah.
Not sure it ever lived up to the dream in reality, but they are certainly booked for a long, long time. Most famously at the Royal Rumble 94, which this is a match I've watched with my kids. This is for me, this is as good as 90s wrestling gets. It's so ridiculous. It's brilliant. When something enters into the realm of it's so hokey, it's genius. We have The Undertaker in a casket match versus Yokozuna. And to say there's outside interference would be an understatement. I think at one point there's about 15 bad guys all wailing on The Undertaker. Literally everyone on the roster is a bad guy is in there. Beaten up, whether it's Adam Bomb or Crush or Tenru, the Bam Bam Bigelow.
Jeff Jarrett was in there, I think.
They're all in there getting their licks in, so that ultimately The Undertaker gets shoved into the casket. Yet again, Yokozuna doesn't get a clean win as champion. Yet again, he needs help. But then, Ash, you have a beautiful way of words. Talk me through what happens to The Undertaker afterwards, that match.
Yes, so The Undertaker gets put into the casket, and you see this image of Bam Bam Bigelow just jumping on the casket, and I think they lock the casket, and then something happens crazy. Now Undertaker's soul is going to be transformed to the heavens or something, and you see it on the screen, and you're trying to understand. I was still a kid. I was trying to understand what's happening, but as a kid, you're like, oh, what the? It is so crazy. So Undertaker is gone. He's gone to the heavens.
He's ascended. He's ascended.
He will be back.
But as a kid, it was like one of the greatest things I've ever seen. Probably only second to none to Skeletor meeting his doom at the end of the Master of the Universe movie. As a kid, seeing like the Undertaker's face, like all this black and white graphics and the lightning, and then he ascends, and then this vapor kind of goes out, and you see this body kind of floated up into the heavens. But that's the Undertaker written off. I mean, he is gone for 8 months. There is no Undertaker. We get to WrestleMania 10. There's no Undertaker on the card. No Undertaker on King of the Ring. We don't see him again until SummerSlam. So that's like a major contender and a major threat to the world title that's out of the picture. Heading into WrestleMania 10, we all thought at one point it was going to be Lex Luger versus Yokozuna for the rematch from SummerSlam. And maybe that was the plan, and maybe it's somewhere along the line we get kind of cold feet about whether Yokozuna can pull off leading the company. Maybe the groundswell of love for Bret Hart is just too much, because for much of '93 he continues to tread water but remains the WWF's most popular act. For whatever reason, we end up with this very kind of convoluted but brilliant WrestleMania 10, whereby Yokozuna has to wrestle 2 matches, and he has to wrestle the co-winners of the 1994 Royal Rumble in Lex Luger and Bret Hart in simultaneous matches. Now, you and I have talked at length about Bret and Owen's brilliant match at WrestleMania 10, and for anyone that wants to kind of dive into that, we've got a whole long episode on Gone Too Soon Owen Hart that you can check out in the archives. But for the purposes of this match, we're going to focus on Lex and Yokozuna first at WrestleMania 10 with Mr. Perfect as the special guest referee.
Yep, that was an interesting match. Mr. Perfect dressed in referee's pajamas for that match.
It looks great. That's if you ever become a referee, Ash. That's how I imagine you in there.
You have a set, don't you? You told me you got a set of pajamas like that, I think, Ben.
Not quite. One day.
Whenever there's a fight between the kids, let me go put on these referee pajamas.
People's Broker stepping up to the plate.
Yeah. So yeah, this was again another. Again, I was thinking as a kid, I was like, yeah, Lex Luger is gonna win, and then the main event is gonna be Bret and Lex. Can you imagine that match? Not to be. Lex Luger once again fails at capturing the world title.
But he has an out, at least. He has an out because of Mr. Perfect.
Mr. Perfect.
It's a kind of convoluted disqualification finish. So Luger doesn't lose face. Yokozuna isn't pinned. Kind of everyone kind of makes their way into the, Yokozuna makes his way by hook or by crook into the main event. And I think it's safe to say that the WrestleMania 10 main event is probably one of the worst main events in WrestleMania history, with one of the best closing moments. I mean, the reality is you've got Bret who is playing up being injured at the hands of his brother in the early match.
Yeah.
And you've got Yokozuna who is blown up. You've got Roddy Piper in there as the guest referee, wearing a Tasmanian Devil t-shirt for some reason. You got Burt Reynolds as the commentator. I mean, it's just a convoluted mess in Madison Square Garden, but it doesn't matter because it's all about the finish. Yokozuna, it's not a patch on the match that they have in WrestleMania 9, and worth saying that this is, we've seen quite considerable weight gain from Yokozuna during this time. So he's now in at about 568 versus the 505 he was at a year ago, which was already huge. So he's a lot bigger. He still can move around, but not the same as he could a year ago.
Yeah.
The closing moments, he goes to hit a Banzai drop. For whatever reason, raises an arm in the air, which he's never done before when hitting a Banzai drop, and then falls over.
Yeah. What did you think of that finish? Falls over, and then Bret doesn't even do any kind of move, because you'd think maybe Bret goes to do a move, but he just pins him.
Well, if I was Bret, I'd do what he did. I think get the win any way you can. I didn't care. 10-year-old me didn't care. Bret Hart won. And all I cared about was the closing moments of Bret being hoisted on the shoulder of everyone and finishing out WrestleMania 10 as champion. And I think that's
Owen coming down the ring.
Yeah, this was the moment. This was the payoff we've been leading to. Maybe it's not where the company first thought we'd be. Maybe it was always supposed to be Lex. But whatever happened, Yokozuna does the job and Bret is champion.
In your mind, were you thinking, because obviously we didn't know, and in your mind, were you just waiting for Hulk Hogan to show up again? probably at this moment from somewhere.
No, I thought Bret was safe, but I wasn't expecting it to end like that. And it is, again, one of those memorable finishes. But it, again, makes, Yokozuna looks quite weak in defeat, really. But this is really the end of his World Championship run for someone who is, the end of his main event run. And this is the height of his wrestling career. We never again see Yokozuna in a top profile spot, and it's crazy to think how quickly this ascent and descent happens. Really, we're talking late 1992 to early 1994. That is really peak Yokozuna.
Yep, 18 months, quickly, straight away within 3 months, put into the main card, and wins the Royal Rumble. He's a world champion, feuding with Hogan, whatever. Yeah, and then suddenly, bam, and then the descent, as you said. But again, as you said, his weight issues, health issues, unfortunately played a part there.
Yeah.
I'm Mark Merrill, former WWE Intercontinental Wrestling Champion and 3-time WCW World Television Champion. I am thrilled to announce the release of my new book, Bad to Good. The inspiring story of a wrestling wild man chronicles the highs and lows of my life, both in and out of the wrestling ring. It's a powerful narrative of overcoming adversity and the importance of perseverance, no matter how tough the journey gets. Co-authored with my good friend and award-winning journalist, Ben Veal, this is a story I've long wanted to share, and I truly hope it inspires you. I hold nothing back in this book, revealing the untold truths of my extraordinary life, from my modest beginnings and my first boxing match to the struggles with addiction that almost consumed me and my evolution into the charismatic Johnny B. Bad. This book offers an insider's perspective on the world of professional wrestling and my journey as a sports entertainer. You'll read about my pivotal negotiations with Vince McMahon that led to the first ever guaranteed contract in the WWF and how that decision marked me within the locker room. I discuss the impact of my relationship with my then wife, Rena, known to fans as Sable, on my career. I also confront the darkest moments of my life, how I hit rock bottom and how that experience sparked my rebirth, leading me to become America's leading motivational school speaker, inspiring young people and transforming lives. Featuring forwards by my good friends Diamond Dallas Page and Lex Luger, along with contributions from Mick Foley, Eric Bischoff, Vince Russo, and others who shared this wild journey with me. Bad to Good is a story you don't want to miss. Head to Amazon.com or WrestlingLife.online now to pick up your copy.
So the next time we have like a big match for him on a main stage is Survivor Series 1994. So the big run has continued. But he does compete at the King of the Ring. But we have Survivor Series 94 as the one that's really worth talking about, because that is where we see the culmination of the Undertaker feud. And I again, kind of a match that kind of lives in my memory, partly because for some crazy reason Chuck Norris is the special enforcer, which just feels like such a throwback to another era.
I remember that.
But I guess this is the same year that you've kind of got King of the Ring headlined by Jerry Lawler and Roddy Piper. We've got William Shatner doing spots with Bret Hart. Like, it was the new generation on paper, but it certainly didn't seem it from a presentation. But that as it may, the Undertaker, it's a casket match, which is obviously, we've seen that at the 1994 Royal Rumble. So this is the return. Undertaker hits a DDT, hits a big boot on Yokozuna. He falls through the ropes and into the casket. So he kind of essentially puts himself in the casket. Yeah. Undertaker snatches the Japanese flag from Mr. Fuji's hand, snaps it in two, which apparently is a thing you're allowed to do to other people's flags, just not your own.
Foreign flags,
Yeah. Slams the lid, gains the victory, and that's it. That is the end of the rivalry in emphatic fashion. Yokozuna's in the casket, and really that's the end of his big run on top in any capacity. That's really the last marquee match he has, because the Yokozuna we get moving into 1995 and beyond is a very different Yokozuna. We don't really have that same dominance anymore. There's a kind of a vulnerability. There's more of a playful aspect to it. Maybe there's more of the real man behind the character. starting to come to life. But the next time we see Yokozuna is WrestleMania 11. And you and I have talked about this on the Owen Hart Gone Too Soon episode. He comes in as the mystery tag team partner of Owen Hart to vanquish the Smoking Guns and become a tag team champion. And I mean, everything Owen Hart did was magical, but the combination of Owen Hart and Yokozuna was so magical because Yokozuna was so stoic and serious and intense, and then Owen Hart was just so silly. Yeah. They were like the ultimate odd couple, weren't they? And it worked so beautifully.
Absolutely. I think amazing team. We talked about it on previous episode. You got Owen Hart, great technician, high flyer, and then you've got this monster. So what used to happen, I think, in these matches, and I heard about this, people speak about it, I think, because of how limited by this time Yokozuna was because of his weight. He had to be put into a tag team. But again, great move, worked really well, the odd tag team. So like Owen would do most of the work and he would just tag in Yokozuna. He'd come in, hit a few moves and stuff, tag him back in. But what an unstoppable team they were. And again, even on camera, Owen, this over-the-top character, just jumping up and down like crazy. And there's Yokozuna in the corner, just chilling, relaxing, pretty serious, no big deal, another day at the office. And so it was one of those teams. And even when cutting promos, you always used to be Owen. And then you had obviously Jim Cornette and stuff with him. So, yeah. Great team.
It worked so well, and obviously, you know, the tag team scene is pretty limited by this point. But you know, they have feuds with Lex Luger and a Bulldog, who are now the Allied Powers. You know, obviously there's the Smoking Guns still in the mix. They have this match that we've talked about before in your house, where they're against Shawn Michaels and Diesel, where all the titles are on the line, and it has this really convoluted finish involving a Bulldog and just a hot mess. But for really most of 1995. Yoko and Owen are side by side, but at the same time, behind the scenes, as you say, Yoko's health is, you know, deteriorating. The company's getting very worried about him. They're trying to help him with his weight. But all of that leads to 1996, where there's a couple of moments from 1996 that really stand out for me. So one is Royal Rumble 1996, where in some crazy bit of booking, which I've never understood, given what we were saying about Royal Rumble 1993, Shawn Michaels manages to eliminate both Yokozuna and Vader together, presumably using their momentum is the idea and getting a run-up. But yeah, the 227-pound Shawn Michaels manages to eliminate about 900 pounds of humanity with a run-up. Which is
when you got momentum, you know, anything is possible.
When you got the HBK, anything's possible. But it's a few weeks after that Yokozuna turns face, and I remember, you know, it's really, really cool spot. He kind of turns against Owen Hart and the British Bulldog and Jim Cornette. He basically has enough for they're humiliating him because he gets super kicked out of a ring by Shawn Michaels and he can't get back in for the 10 count. And so again, they kind of really build in his weight into the storyline. And he just snaps. It's this big bearded Yokozuna by this point, just snaps, tries to attack Jim Cornette. Owen Hart and the Bulldog beat him down until he goes to come back. And so crazily, you've got a babyface Yokozuna for the first time in 3 years.
Yeah.
And the thing that blows my mind is at In Your House 6, we hear him speak for the first time ever. So for 3 years, he has been so fiercely protected because he is Samoan. He has been fiercely protected with just one word at the end of every promo, Banzai! And that's all we ever hear. And then suddenly, in this what should be a huge moment, which you'd have thought they'd save for a pay-per-view, or at the very least they'd promote it on Monday Night Raw. Yokozuna is going to speak for the first time. The former two-time WWF champion, who's been cloaked in mystique, just does a backstage spot with Doc Hendricks. Where he just speaks like a normal Samoan guy. All of the Japanese veneer is gone. And he talks about kind of having 650 pounds of bad attitude. And yeah, It's just suddenly like anything that was Yokozuna. He keeps the Banzai, but anything that was Yokozuna is just kind of obliterated in that moment.
Yeah. Bit weird. I think that was like, what? Like, what happened there? It was kind of like when they had Kofi Kingston lose his accent. If you remember that.
Yep. You have a Triple H just go, weren't you Jamaican?
What happened to your accent? So it was one of those things, and you're like, what happened to this? So they could have done it better, as you said. They could have built it up a bit more. Maybe he could have disappeared for like a few weeks or something like that. Like they got beaten up. He got beaten up so badly, and they could have done it. Okay, yeah, we will hear from Yokozuna from his home, or he's going to come and speak in the ring. That could have built it up, especially those years. If we remember,
Yokozuna has spent years kind of going to an intense language training course because he wants to be an American, like do what reverse Sergeant Slaughter, like he wants to become an American citizen, so he's learnt the language. So do you know what I mean? Like it's like some logic for why actually he's not Japanese, but in fact is clearly Samoan would have been good.
Yeah, that could have been the start of the actual bloodline story in those days.
Wow.
He could be like, you know what? I'm returning to my roots. This is who I really am. This is me, Rodney Anoaʻi or something like that. So it could have been something. And
I was going to introduce my protege, Rocky Maivia.
my young boy. Yeah. But it could have been, I think we were talking about it like previously in preparation. What could Yokozuna be like in the Attitude Era? Yeah. So that could have been amazing. Like he would have been a change of character. He would have been amazing, I think, and he could have had his own faction even or something like that when they were having those faction warfares.
He's been able to transition towards being more of a figurehead. So much like Andre the Giant became in the later years, someone who's a spectacle in and of himself. You don't need to see Yokozuna wrestle in the ring. Just the physical sight of him arriving was awe-inspiring. And what could have been, absolutely.
And as I said, in those days when they were having those like sort of like the faction warfare, you had the Boricuas and you had the DOA and you had all those guys, the Nation of Domination. So it could have been like the bloodline in there, and they could have been interesting.
But he turns face, and it's I don't know about you, but it's just I think it's just hugely disappointing. There's no real thought to it. It's very throwaway. And, part of this is, his weight is really, really getting out of control now. He talks in this promo about being 650 pounds. I don't know what the real number is, but gets to April of 1996. He's feuding with Vader, and Vader breaks Yokozuna's leg.
Yeah.
To be kind of carried away on a forklift.
I remember that.
But this is to get him out of the company. This is to say you've got to go to intense weight loss. You've got to lose weight for your health because you are killing yourself.
Yeah.
So in kayfabe, he's written off to have time away, and it gets. There is no great weight loss because by SummerSlam 1996, he's back in the free for all, and he breaks the ring. I mean, we know it's a gimmicked ring, but he breaks the ring. He has this spot with Steve Austin where the ring falls apart when he goes for Banzai drops. It's similar to WrestleMania X, but even more visually significant. I mean, why that wasn't on the pay-per-view, heaven only knows. But so Steve Austin, the kind of new king of the ring and the climbing star, is bizarrely paired with Yokozuna.
Yeah.
But it's another one of those kind of Yokozuna's too heavy to compete. But he really is by this point. He's spiraled. Do you remember that match with Steve Austin?
I vaguely remember it. I think by that time, Yokozuna was kind of just like fading away. And it was sad to see it because just this guy used to be this nonstop, unstoppable heel. And he was a world champion, 2-time world champion. He beat Bret. He beat Hogan. So seeing him, it felt really, really, it didn't feel really good.
No, it is. There's that disconnect with wrestling, isn't there, where sometimes things feel too real, and seeing someone, really falling from grace, someone that you've really, really loved and admired, is really sad to see. And I mean, I always remember watching Survivor Series 1996, which would end up being his last televised match in the WWF. And he's just thrown in there this really, really weird 8-man tag match in Madison Square Garden. You've got Farouk, Vader, fake Razor Ramon and fake Diesel versus Flash Funk, Savio Vega, Superfly Jimmy Snuka, and Yokozuna. I mean, that's just like a wrestling fever dream right there, isn't it?
Pretty random. Pretty
like throwing
random.
a pinboard, isn't it? Who's on your roster?
Well, it's one of those, when you play on PlayStation, when you play with WWF games, and bam, when a card magically appears. Okay, this is the match.
That'll do. But that's it. That's the last match. It's a big schmoz finish. There's no clear win. It's just a mess. He's just in there. He's huge by that point. And, the WWF tries to get him to lose weight. They can't. He's released. He's unable to pass the New York State Athletic Commission's physicals, and he's let go. He's no longer with the company. And
apparently, prior to that, I think they did try to work with him quite hard with the weight. They tried. Firstly, he refused. Then I think they're trying to send him to Duke University to follow their program. Again, he didn't want to go, so then he was doing it at home or something like that. But it just unfortunate for him. It just didn't really work.
No. I think from a legacy point of view, he's such an instrumental character because he really did provide that bridge, didn't he, between the Hulkamania era and the New Generation era. He really was the one that was the transition between Hogan and Bret, because when Bret became champion in 1992, there was still the shadow of Hulkamania hanging over him.
Yeah.
By the time WrestleMania X rolls around, we're in Bret Hart country now. So Yokozuna really played such a pivotal role in switching from the wrestling we knew to the wrestling of the future.
I mean, every era has this giant. So when I was very little, when I first laid eyes on wrestling, it was Andre, right? So then after Andre was gone, it was Yokozuna. He was that giant. He was the giant of the 90s. Like, who's gonna body slam this guy? Who's gonna throw him over the top rope? Who's gonna beat him? It's impossible. To me, that was the biggest legacy. And as you said, from his debut to seeing him, he's unbeatable. This guy coming down the ring, unbeatable.
I mean, his wrestling journey doesn't end with the WWF. He does continue, despite his spiraling weight, he does continue to wrestle the independent circuit, all the way to coming over to the UK, which is where his untimely death will take place on October 23rd, 2000 in Liverpool whilst touring over here. Incredibly sad, such a young age. You hear these things as a kid, and these guys are, they're these larger than life heroes, and you don't really think about age. And then you become an adult nostalgic fan, and I realized this with obviously Yoko passing away at 34, Davey Boy at 39, Owen Hart at 34. These are all ages that you and I have passed now, and it's crazy to think how young they were when they passed, but also what they did with their time on this earth and the legacy they left behind. And for me, Yokozuna's legacy is he paved the way for these kind of larger wrestlers to be booked as really dominant, athletic world champions. And he has, such a special place in the history books for Yokozuna, and obviously beloved by everyone that knew him within the business as well. Yeah.
Crazy to think he was only 34 years old. So then when you kind of rewind the clock, how young he was when he debuted, we didn't know that. And at one time, he was the youngest world champion. I think he was 25 when he became world champion, and it was all the way up until I think Randy Orton became world champion. He held that record for a long time, but you'd never think that to look at him. He was never presented like that, was he? He was certainly wasn't presented like a rookie. Yeah, exactly, because he looked like he's a veteran in the ring, the way he moved and the way he was kind of built and stuff like that. But yeah, as you said, and I said it at the start of this episode, he opened the door. He kind of changed that image of the Samoan wrestlers, and with so many Samoan wrestlers then come in the future becoming world champions, obviously straight after it was The Rock. Roman Reigns, and even like someone like Samoa Joe, and these big guys and athletic big guys. I think he was the man and the first ever kind of champion from the Anoa'i family, and kind of building that legacy. He was the man.
That legacy that still lives on now with Jey Uso. Incredible.
Yeah, incredible. And I know Rikishi speaks so highly of the guy. So his character, one other thing is, on screen you saw him as this quiet guy, but off screen, and there's some footage I've seen, he had such a sense of humor. Like, so he gets asked this question, I think in one, so I saw someone share this, like how much he used to eat on a daily basis. Looks like my grocery shop for the year almost. Someone asked him, Yoko, how much do you eat? And he goes, what did you have for breakfast or something like that? And he goes, more than you. And I don't remember if this was kayfabe, but I remember there was this story like Yokozuna went to this buffet restaurant, and then I think it was a thing they did, and they closed they put the closed sign. I think this was something they were doing.
Yokozuna. I also saw a brilliant story. I remember talking to you about this recently when we were researching for this show. I saw it's been doing around. Jacob Fatu has been talking about how, as a very young child backstage at WWF, he was given responsibility for looking after the WWF Championship, and he lost it in catering for a while.
Like you say, what? Hogan stole it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's amazing. And, obviously he's inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2012 by the Usos and Rikishi. Well deserved. One of those, yet again, it's always so sad when they're posthumous, but he got his very deserved place in the Hall of Fame. And just one of my favorites, to be honest, and I get a bit emotional kind of doing this really, because I just love Yokozuna, and I think everyone did, and he's just such a core part of our childhoods, and I really feel very blessed that we've got to do this one today. I think every Gone Too Soon we've done so far has celebrated the life of someone that's very, very special to us, and I hope that this has been a nice trip down memory lane for other fans like us, and anyone who's kind of especially watching this on YouTube. I'd love it if you could kind of pop a comment down below in terms of your favorite moment from Yokozuna's run, but also like what could have been, as you said, like what would Yokozuna, if he had got his weight under control, what would Yokozuna have looked like in the Attitude Era? What could Yokozuna have looked like in the WCW? Like really what could have been, and but also what is his legacy. But for today, Ash, I'm so glad we've got to do another one. We've got a lot more coming, haven't we, as well?
We got a lot more coming, so stay tuned. And some exciting stuff happening. And we love doing these. This is like, I love this. And as you say, reliving our childhood with these amazing guys. Unfortunately, gone too soon. And what could they have been if they had stuck around a bit longer? They were around today. But it's just amazing to kind of relive their memories and relive their careers and the happy time in our lives.
Yeah. Well, Yokozuna, we miss you, brother. People's Broker, thank you, Ash Ajaz, as always, for joining me. Remind us, guys out there, how we can connect with you on social media again.
So very easy to connect. YouTube, I have a YouTube channel, The People's Broker, and you can also connect with me on all social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn. Give a shout, give my YouTube channel a subscribe, some good stuff out there. So check it out, guys.
As always, check us out as well. We're here at Wrestling Life Online. You can find obviously the show on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, bringing you real talk from real talent every single week. For today, this has been me.
Thank you. It's been The People's Broker.
This has been produced, as always, by the brilliant Jeff Easton from Tall 8 Productions. This has been Wrestling Life with Ben Veal. This has been Gone Too Soon with Yokozuna. We'll be back soon. See ya.
See you next time.